What is up, everybody? It is Stephanie here with Infernal TV, and I'm bringing you my review of the new Temple of Void album, The Crawl. So my immediate thoughts with this album is Temple of Void did go slightly outside of their classic death doom sound, but in all honesty, it works because they didn't do anything overly crazy or drastic. They incorporated a lot more melody, a lot more catchier riffs, even some goth influences. So it sounds really cool. So I've always been a fan of the death doom genre. And as far as more modern bands, Temple of Void has one of the strongest sounds in that genre. And I know this is debatable for other fans, but I've personally appreciated when bands try and go outside of their usual style. And this is one of those examples where it really does work because Temple of Void added a lot more versatility to their sound. The Crawl as a whole is very unpredictable. There are some killer solos in this album, and no song is boring, and also no two songs sound the same, which to me is very important. That said, I also think this album works because Temple of Void still has their core sound, and it's just more they evolved. It's more that they added some more of their influences just to kind of change things up a bit. And like I said, I'll go more in detail about the changes, but in this instance, it absolutely works. Just some notes before I start this review. So this is the first album with new bass player Justin Malik, and something else I find interesting is vocalist Mike Erdody. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. So the old guitar player left, and then I'm just going to refer to him as Mike. Mike took over guitar and he does vocals, and his vocals have always been really killer. I love those deep guttural vocals, and with The Crawl, it just takes that, Mike takes his vocal style to a completely different level. This album was recorded by Kurt Belau of God City Studio. And I was looking into some of the other bands that he recorded, such as Gatecreeper, and those bands to me have such a raw and primal sound, and you can really hear that in The Crawl. It was also mastered by Brad Boatwright, and looking into his resume, I mean, he's even outside of bands, he's mastered music for films and TV. So obviously he has a very extensive resume, and I think with this type of, with the recording, mixing, and then also with the mastering, it really brought out the raw and primal sound that Temple of Void had before, but with the mastering, you can really hear the versatility, but it all blends in very well. So that's why it's so important to have such a good engineering team behind you. Now, the three main songs I want to point out in this review. The first is actually the first on the album, which is Poison Icon. And it opens up with one of the craziest guitar parts on this entire album. But, we're not, this isn't an insane tech death song or anything, because, there's a lot more groove in this song, and that really plays in during the solo when the solo kicks in, and this is the one where there are a lot of goth influences. Think of that moodiness type of vibe, if you understand. I'm a big fan of goth music too, so I get it, but you get you get that feeling when listening to this song. And instead of just crazy guitar parts throughout this entire song, you hear more guitar embellishments, which to me that's almost just as cool. I love solos, don't get me wrong, but it's just those little parts that, it's they're so perfectly written and they fit in the right place, and it just adds so much more to a song. The next song that I want to discuss is Godless Cynic. It starts with a cool drum and bass part, but then when the guitars kick in, they're pretty much like a chugging monster. And I specifically wanted to also point out this song because while it is one of their most brutal songs, this is the one where you're really hearing some of the most melody. It's almost like it goes back and forth between this like caveman, chaotic type of sound and then this very dark yet melodic type of vibe. So, you know, it really, as a listener, it really leaves you guessing. And even though I keep emphasizing like all the different changes and everything that Temple of Void introduced with this album, they do go back to their core sound. Specifically with the last song, The Twin Stranger. You really hear their death doom roots with this song. It starts very, very slow, yet it is super heavy. And, you know, Mike has some of the deepest growls in this song compared to the rest of this album. And it's pretty much just raw, like from the beginning to the end. So I think a song that kind of, you know, still hones in their classic sound, you know, that was a good way to end the album. That was a good way to just wrap things up. And it's a good reminder that even though Temple of Void, they were evolving, they were introducing new influences into their sound, they're, at the end of the day, they're still like the super heavy death doom band. Overall, I'm giving this album a 9.5 out of 10. I am very, very impressed with this Temple of Void album. I went in thinking it was just, you know, as I said, going to be like another super solid Death Doom album, and I was blown away. So definitely check out The Crawl when it comes out. Temple of Void's The Crawl will be out on March 6th, and it will be released on Relapse Records. So I will include all of the links where you can pre-order the album and keep up with everything that Temple of Void is doing. I'm sure this is going to be a very successful release and they're going to have a big year. So thank you for watching, everybody, and stay metal.